Welcome back, everybody. We've just had one amazing game for you, and guess what? We've got another one right around the corner. It's our last two undefeated teams in this 20, I want to say player, but I guess it is 20 school, 20 team Swiss format showdown. It's going to be a TAS, that is Toowoomba, taking on the likes of MacGregor. One of the most fun names to say. In fact, two of the most fun names if you really want to get into it. I'm excited, you, and I can't help myself. I have a feeling we're in for a grand final preview here.
As someone with Scottish heritage, I feel like you're challenging me when you say MacGregor with an atrocious Scottish accent. Like, it hurts the spirit. I say the soul, but I'm a ginger, so, I'm not allowed to make that joke. Good start, but what should be a really high-level game, because again, undefeated teams always have something to prove against one another. So when they do clash heads, the drafting, I think, really needs to be on point, as well as in-game discipline. We witnessed in the first game of the day some really good discipline for the first 10 minutes of the game, and then players devolving into let's fight. I really want to see from these teams here the level of discipline that you would expect from an undefeated team.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I think we do need to start to hold these two teams in particular to that slightly higher standard because of where they're sitting right now. This is their chance to prove essentially why they will be our first team that we can call, all right, these guys are right now the best in the state. They will be sitting alone atop the mountain, the last undefeated squad. And there's a bit of pride that comes with that. I'm excited to see how they do play it out. Obviously, there are going to be some big names we're going to be keeping our eyes on. CYQAQ, that big one. One of the highest solo queue ranked player, I think, in this event. But we still haven't really seen the performance that has entirely backed that up. If there's going to be a time to step up and be that star player, this is that game.
Yeah, and we talked briefly earlier today, Formal, about the patch. This patch, if you are a carry mid laner who uses these mages, now is the time for you to flourish. Stuff like LeBlanc has finally started to rise up in popularity. If you were a Syndra or Orianna player, they are, I think, just hit a little bit harder now as well. And I think even I think it's like the Cassiopeia has been sneaking back in to the mid lane era. So I'm really hoping to see either these champions, or if you're an AD, if you've got the Yasuo, the Yone, the Zed, the Talon, if you're one of those mid laners, sorry, your top laner is now more viable to play some more AP variations, the Rumble in particular. So a lot of variations that these teams can bring into battle, and I'm curious to see what they'll do to help CY unlock himself, again, assuming he is this kind of player that we hope to see.
Yeah, I am hoping to see that as well. It's interesting that you're highlighting, all these mid-champion roles that they could go down when traditionally CY is actually a bit of an AD carry main.
Thing.
Yeah, true. That's just it. There are options that you can take there. And Tristana mid not only is a thing, but it's actually a very scary thing. It's something that hasn't been adapted, I feel, as much at this level of play. But I mean, when you're here, this is almost when you can get away with those picks sometimes a little bit more if you catch your opponents off guard in that sort of format and positioning. We're still waiting for the players to ready up, though, so I apologize for the little bit of a delay right here. I do believe it is going to be looking like our I believe that's Toowoomba actually lining up on the red side with I believe MacGregor on blue at the time being. So that's where it's going to be. Priority pick then going to MacGregor against Toowoomba, who, again, has this star player. Do you actually start to try and ban and pick this CY out when you come into this?
I feel like for your first three bans, I don't inherently think that all three should be angled to CY. One or two of them, absolutely. Find his most played champions, find what he's comfortable on, and cut it nice and early so he doesn't blind it. But other than that, there are still so many champions that you need to take into account. Are you going to, for example, if you're MacGregor, are you going to first pick the Jinx? Are you going to ban the Jinx? Are you going to look at jungle Morgana? Are you going to look at the new junglers like Zed, Darius? Do you know how to play with them? Do you know how to play against them? There are so many champions right now in this patch that you have to take into consideration that I don't believe that committing a lot of bans onto a single individual in the first phase is a good idea, unless you are like 90% certain that that one player you're target banning does everything for his team. And I just don't think that's going to be the case for this game.
No, and historically that actually hasn't been the case for this side at all. Toowoomba has been a very much well-balanced team, actually. We keep coming in expecting CY to have these major pop-off performances, and that's never really been the case. So I do agree, you don't target ban them out. The only exception would be if there was like a one trick and you can just completely negate their impact by getting rid of one champion. Then you tend to go for that. But at this level, when you're at the top, not only do you sort of need to ban just like, I guess, champions that you don't want to play against, but you also want to ban champions that will guide your opponents into picking a team composition that you want to play against. It's not necessarily about individual matchups, but it's also about what your team wants to do and what sort of champions disrupt what your entire team image is, and playing around that. Like, there's so many deeper layers to bans besides I don't feel like playing against Pyke today, or this person won tricks Morgana as an example. You need to look at that larger picture. And at this stage, with these two teams, I expect them to be starting to develop that, and it's why I keep going back to this: planning, organizing, structure. This is when all of those are going to come into a lot of fruition during this pick and bans. This is when you need to have put together and crafted your ideal team strategy.
Yeah. Now, if I'm looking at this, because I've done a bit of my own little bit of scouting formal. I am looking at just OP.GGs. It's nothing too fancy. It's literally anyone can do this. And you look at what is good with these particular players, and there are some immediate standouts that when you look at the competitive side, you're like, well, these guys aren't meta. But we've said time and time again, get rid of people's comfort champions. So you talked about CY, and yes, he is a marksman player for the most part, but he's got a lot of games on Tristana. He's got a decent number of games on Lucian, both of which are viable mid laners. But he's also got a staggering 123 games on a Xayah. Now, Xayah mid isn't traditional, but Xayah mid is a possibility if he is indeed rocking in that middle lane. Now, if he's the marksman, you're going to have to say, okay, you got to throw the Jinx ban at him because Jinx is really, really strong right now. And I'll ask you this formal: if you saw someone with 123 games on a Xayah when she is kind of coming back down from when she was super popular, is that worth throwing the ban at?
I would argue yes, but I also would argue Xayah, not the priority ban when coming up against this team. I'm a little nervous about saying who it is, but if you think back and watch some of the games that happened earlier in the season, there was one in particular that you should be keeping your eyes on, and I will address it when we come because it's very off meta, and I don't want to spoil too much just yet. So we will get back to that. However, when you do look at the two teams, I suppose, and their match history, it's a little bit striking, I feel, how much more dedicated to specific champions actually Toowoomba happens to be compared to MacGregor. MacGregor definitely seems like they have wide champion pools. They play who they want to, with a couple of exceptions in the bot lane. That's not the case. And I kind of prefer having, comfort champions being actual comfort champions like what Toowoomba has put together. I know, yes, that makes you maybe easier to ban, but at the same time, if you understand a champion through and through, you're going to be coming into matchups where you do get it with that much confidence. You're able to focus more on the map play than the champions play because everything should be second nature. It's that sort of preemptive preparation and understanding one element that allows you to explore others. And it's one of the reasons why I do feel Toowoomba has had a lot of success so far in this event.
Yeah, comfort over meta is something that I will stand by until the day I die, formal. Like, yes, you can tell me that the Jinx is super meta, but if you're telling me, okay, what am I more scared of? A guy who's got 23 games on a Jinx, has a 52% win rate in ranked, compared to a guy who's played 123 games on a Xayah in ranked with a 63% win rate? I know what I'm more scared of. I'm more scared of the Xayah. Because if you force him to play the Jinx, yes, the Jinx on paper is stronger, but Jinx may not be his playstyle. Like, that's the thing with a lot of marksmen that I find super interesting, is you get marksman players and everyone just assumes, oh, they're marksman players, that all marksmen play the same. Well, they really don't. Mechanically, there are so many little nuances that you can see within each champion. Like, I think my favorite ones are have you seen the animation canceling some people can pull off on Caitlyn? To the point where your Q is you cast your Q, you move, and the Q fires from the original spot and kills someone because they're not ready for it. Like, so many little nuances. So I feel like, ban what's comfort, or what you can from comfort, and sort of deal with the rest as it comes to you. Because a Jinx is manageable, and a Jinx with someone who doesn't know exactly what they're doing is easy to lock down and kill them, as opposed to a Xayah who is slippery, mobile, and has a competent pilot in charge.
That said, you know, you can do all this planning you like, and then all of a sudden they lock in the choke at the center bot lane, and you just go, oh, well, that happened.
You're
And all the
disgusting.
prep that we did just goes out the window, and you cry inside. Look, I've got some interesting news for you all. We will be having to go to another break. A little bit of situations arising in terms of getting these teams organized. It should not take long. We hope. Fingers are crossed here. So hopefully we will be able to come back and into this pick and ban that I feel like has been sufficiently hyped up now. Feel a little robbed if we don't at least get that. Fingers are crossed. We're getting warmed up. We'll be back hopefully in just a few moments. All right, welcome back, everybody. I told you we wouldn't be too long. You know what, Ewan? The Riot client surprises me each and every day with the new tips and tricks it gives us, I have to admit. We learned something new, I feel, and what we're learning right now is CY is, in fact, going in that bot lane. Some of the images we saw before were not quite correct, although what has me surprised is Vasol currently lined up in support. Typically, this has been the mid laner for the 2-1 side, and I'm curious if we are seeing a little bit of a lineup swap for this very special fight of the Titans.
It could just be that they didn't get in lobby in the right position as well, so let's not take that into consideration, because If it's the mid laner that I think you're thinking of, then I'm very excited to see a capable pilot on that champion. But that champion has to get through pick bans. So far, the two coming through. The Xayah, we talked about it before, right? 123 games, get rid of it. Get it off the table as quick as humanly possible. The Volibear is a little bit of an interesting ban to me personally. I don't feel like it should be that high in priority. There are multiple ways of dealing with it. So we'll see, where that goes for. On the other side, two very good bans from the side of Toowoomba. I love to see them. Seraphine is disgusting. Get her out of my games. And Ornn is ridiculously competent, even if you go 0-7. So I love to see those two bans coming through. And I think that was the champion you were referring to, weren't you, Paul?
It was. I mean, you have to do it, though. Vasol has been insane on Assassins throughout this event thus far. Katarina, of course, being that other main one. Not meta whatsoever, but every time it's been locked in, it has surprised us. I like the scouting coming through from the MacGregor side. They are able to sort of take away the key champions that, Toowoomba has success on, and you could say the same thing going back. I did bring up how, for the most part, MacGregor doesn't really prioritize surface champions. Rel has been, Luden's go-to support. So we're seeing focused, target bans on each side. We're seeing that scouting has come into play. Now I'm expecting clean team compositions because each of these sides have done their homework.
Yeah, so here I now have the question of, do you prioritize the Jinx or do you go for something else as one of those top tier carries? They do look to have a lot of priority on the Udyr. He is ridiculously good. Tanky, provides crowd control, provides damage, does a little bit of everything, honestly. The only thing he's missing is a dash, but he has a speed boost of bear stance. So it brings everything to the table there. The other side, I'm very interested to see an early rotation of the Alistar. That is far from what you would consider standard, and I would not like to see an early Gnar just yet.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's a little bit too much dedication to your sort of dream team composition that you want to put together. Sometimes you got to sort of respect what your opponents are playing. I slightly disagree on Gnar. I do feel Gnar overall, even in losing matchups, can still have that later game impact. It's the first rotation Alistar that has me a little bit confused, especially without taking a bot lane to go with it. I would understand if, you have your two quick picks, you get your bot lane, boom, boom, done. But leaving the AD carry as sort of that counter kind of tells me CY, without the Xayah available, might have something different up his sleeve.
Yeah, we'll see what they do end up pairing the Alistar up with. I'm very curious. Is it going to be something traditional? Is it going to be something a little bit more abstract? As we do see Tree grabbing access to his Renekton. Renekton can do really, really well. Bullies out the little Gnar and can go toe-for-toe against Mega Gnar as well. So, great matchup there. Yes, he gets bullied in the early game, but it'll be fine. As a all-round lock-in here. I love Orianna. I think she's a fantastic staple mid laner, but the immediate lock-in for the Viego kind of scares me.
Yeah, Viego is, a newer champion. I've only had a chance to see this one played in a competitive environment once thus far, and it was not pretty. Very, very, very hungry Viego. Stole a lot of souls on that day and completely took a game over. Ibby as well has experience on this champion, has been almost one-tricking it since release. It's a good sign again for Toowoomba. They're getting some of their comfort picks, almost forcing them in a sense. It doesn't matter, though. You can talk about counter matchups all you like, Ewan, but I'm going to hold you accountable. What you said, comfort over meta, that comes for matchups as well. And I feel like Toowoomba, at least, are feeling very comfortable.
Yeah, they are, as now we hit the second round of bans here. A lot of marksmen are going to fall victim here. Neither side is locked in. So the question is now, well, CY is going to have his champion pool squeezed quite a bit here. He's already lost access to the Tristana, which we know he's a fan of. His Kaiser's gone. I feel like you have to ban the Jinx here, because there is nothing stopping the side of Toowoomba here from just fourth rotating the Jinx. And Jinx, I will stand by this right now. Jinx is ridiculously strong. I feel like it's a necessary ban, unless Geni has something in his back pocket that just counters Jinx, like maybe the Varus, which I know can do rather well into it because of the range difference between the two of them.
Instead, though, they opt for a more, I suppose, reactive ban or defensive ban. Getting rid of the Olaf, who is typically a counter to a lot of Orianna compositions, not too surprising. So they are kind of banning around their comps. But yeah, you almost have like that next piece of Exodia that could get locked in. We're not seeing the Jinx, though. Instead, we're going to see a Xayah. I'm a little bit surprised by this. Obviously, again, this is a comfort situation. I do feel like CY is someone who could be comfortable on a lot of champs, but with the Jinx left open immediately, it's probably going to get hovered and locked in going the other way in favor of MacGregor.
I think you grab the Jinx here and you grab another team fight tank, something like maybe a Nautilus. Maybe even Thresh if you're comfortable on them. Something like that would be fantastic, because then from the side of MacGregor, you have a phenomenal team fight composition based around winning the early game on the top half of the map, securing dragons 3 and 4, like dragons probably 3, 4, 5, and then snowballing the game from about 25-minute onwards. Rakan, I'm less sold on, honestly. I can see why you want the Rakan. Annoying Xayah. Alistar can struggle to lock it down, but I would have just loved a Nautilus here just to really round out the composition.
You say Nautilus, I actually say Thresh, just because Thresh has the utility to stop the Alistar as well. Yeah, it's the traditional counter matchup to an Alistar. Galio gets locked in last. Okay, so Viego most likely is going to be going jungle, I'm assuming. Nothing too crazy. I hope we're not going back to season 2, right, with Alistar top and then Galio cheeky beaky down there in support. That could be something fun. But no, that's definitely not going to be the case. Right?
Okay. Right. Theoretically speaking, it is possible to have the Galio support with an Alistar solo. Okay, I feel like it's quite safe to say that Toowoomba are not in role order. I'm gonna base my the next 2 minutes of my analysis on the hope that we're not having a Gnar jungle, an Alistar top lane with a Galio bot lane and a Viego mid. So I hope.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. If you look at who is where as well, Vasol the mid laner on the Galio, he's not going to support.
Oh, thank God. Whew, hallelujah. Okay, so their composition. So again, we're talking about MacGregor. They've got a really good team fight composition. They've got a little bit of pick, but just over and all, I think their front to back team fight is phenomenal. But what they have to deal with is a bit more of a counter engage comp, because when you look at what Toowoomba are bringing to the table, their specialty isn't going to necessarily be starting a 5v5 fight, right? They've got Gnar who can jump in and do it. They've got Alistar who can sort of flash with that one, as well as the Galio. They're all a little bit of a stretch. Instead, what they specialize in will be Renekton dives forward, Udyr runs forward, Orianna throws the ball, and Rakan throws themselves forwards. That pulls in the Jinx and Orianna, and then suddenly Gnar jumps over the engaged front line, slams the back line into the wall. Viego jumps in, the Galio pops the ultimate, slams back down into that back line there, while the Alistar and the Viego buy time to keep the Xayah safe, and it comes almost like a flank, a collapsing flank that can come out of Toowoomba. So I feel like when we get to the fights around the objectives, assuming that there isn't a massive goal differential between the two teams, it's going to be MacGregor have to get the perfect engage off, and if they don't, Toowoomba has so many tools available to them to basically punish a mismanaged engage.
Yeah, the one problem that I have is when you typically play team composition rock, paper, scissors, traditional front-to-back team fights tend to counter the counter-engage. Comps counter-engage are usually used well against dive, and dive is good in sort of finding the flanks against the sort of traditional front-to-back. And while, yes, you are highlighting why this is kind of a strong counter-engage composition put together by Toowoomba, they almost need to play it like a dive comp in finding those flanks and then diving into that back line. And I worry that the damage follow-up might not be there just because Xayah might struggle to follow it through. That's going to put more pressure on the Viego, maybe even more pressure on that Galio as well to go AP heavy as opposed to frontline tank heavy. And I could see them falling apart if they cannot get to that Jinx. It's going to be an interesting fight for sure. Obviously, when you look at the MacGregor, it's a pretty straightforward team. You got the beefy front line with Udyr and Renekton. Rakan can provide some of that utility as well to lock people up, or perhaps provide that backline peel. Orianna with the death ball can turn a fight on its head. These are two very volatile team compositions, and it is a fight that can go either way. Wouldn't have it any other way. It is our two undefeated teams. If you haven't been paying attention, I've repeated it ad nauseum. So we're going to be throwing it to one last break while we sync up for this game. But when we come back, it's going to be a showdown you do not want to miss. More Queensland High School League of Legends when we return. Welcome back, everybody. A bit of housekeeping before we go into this, and a bit of an apology as well. The teams are, in fact, the wrong way around, or at least we presented them the wrong way around when discussing them before. Toowoomba is in blue. MacGregor is in red. Makes a bit more sense. Like, I didn't want to express my confusion. I tried to be professional, but instead I made myself look like an idiot, Ewan, and I dragged you with me. I apologize most of all to you.
I feel like I dragged you on that one. I just looked down at my notes. I'm like, all right, this is how it is. Let's go. Didn't check, which is a bit of an oopsies on me. But now we know where everyone is. We do get to have ourselves our undefeated teams go head to head. And I think before the laning phase even starts, I think it's really, really important to note, Tree has decided to take Ignite into the top lane as opposed to the Teleport, which is a bit more standard. So some kill pressure to alleviate what we know to be early game Gnar pressure, right? So I really want to see if Tree can use that Ignite, get like a level 2, level 3 first blood, and really snowball the top half of the map from there.
Yeah, it's going to be curious, especially like when you look at the fact that they opted for the Doran Shield start, which is typically what you want to take if you want to sustain. The Ignite lock-in, very curious indeed. We'll see if they're going to be able to get it. I wouldn't be surprised if an end result is going to be linguini maybe doing a 4-camp start into a topside gank as well, assuming that KingKisuto will be able to press it forward. It's going to be a close match, I feel, either way, as we do get ready to kick this one off. Junglers were starting on opposite sides, so they're going to be looking to play opposite ends of the map, and it's not even a 4-camp start. It might just be a 2-camp start gank a lane. This Udyr is flying.
Yeah, really trying to accelerate instead of the game. He could also be looking for an attempted 3 buff start over his opponent. So we'll see, does he immediately try to rush to the blue buff, the red buff on his opponent's side? Yes, it's not there, but that is maybe what he's looking for. I know some junglers love to just constantly invade on the Udyr, steal everything away. And if that's the case, it's going to hurt linguini a little bit. But also, King is pushed up with no wards, and we are seeing linguini. I think you might go for this early gank, and that Ignite will be so useful in a couple seconds.
Yeah, this was the play that they wanted to set up. The problem is that's a big cannon wave. Still, KingKisuto is going to take the bait on the tree. linguini comes out of the bush, slapping this Gnar around, but the timing was not quite there as he does go mega. Flash forward from linguini. It's the fast bear slap, and it results in the first blood. Meanwhile, down below, Eben, little Aster combo right there, and the follow-up route in place. Here comes Ibby from behind, but doesn't get the movement speed, just short of the wall, and a couple lucky breaks go in favor of the Toowoomba side.
Yeah, and a good way for the side of MacGregor there. They saw the gank up top side, they did lose their top lane, and immediately pressure down bottom lane, weren't able to secure the kill, but the right idea. Meanwhile, on the top half of the map there, obviously, the kill was secured by linguini, which ironically, I think is actually the worst way that could have played itself out. What you need is that kill onto Tree. Tree then pushes out the wave, gets an early recalls. Oh god, Geni's just gonna die! Flash up!
Yeah, Geni deleted right there, unfortunately for them, as stepping too far forward against a lane with that much crowd control is always going to be a bad time. No jungler needed. Something I do want to touch on, though, real quick, back for that first blood play that happened up top. The reason why I got so excited about that as Ibby is going to look for a play in mid was because that was a premeditated plan. Like, that's why the Ignite was locked in. That's why the Udyr selected those camps in particular, because it's the fastest way to get to that level as Tree, already with that first sort of kill on the top side under their belt's going to find another. linguini finds Ibby in the jungle, just slaps him, and the auto follows the flash. Always hate to see it. linguini as well, continuing just to pile on that damage. Else can sit back and watch. Yes, Geni may have died in the bot lane. However, everything else seems to be going quite heavily in favor of our blue side.
Yeah, and that's kind of why you take the Doran Shield on the Renekton. You were questioning it before, and I didn't really get time to go through it. But Renekton's, against ranged matchups, you don't need more damage because your opposing champion will be relatively squishy. In this case, the mini Gnar is not actually that hard to nuke down in terms of what health he has left. Oh my lord, Vasol just straight up solo kills his laning opponent.
Ooh. we're getting a match here, Ewan. We're getting a fun one. We expected, a real fight between our top 2 teams in this tournament, and they're delivering.
Yeah, really good. So I'll quickly go back to top lane before we get pulled somewhere else, because we will. You don't need damage, you need sustainability. So you need the extra health that the Door and Shield provides when you've been hit. Keep yourself healthy.
Not allowed to talk about top lane. I removed you from the channel if you continue to talk about the irrelevant lane known as top. Now, Dragon is going to be taken right now. Ewan, come on, man. Third time's the charm. Let's get this point home.
I'm so sad. I was midway through a point and it just Discord just decides, not happening.
It happens. Like you're not fighting now. We're all good. We can do it. We have a chance. Let's get this point home. Doran Shield, top lane, go.
Oh, was none of that covered? Oh. Alright, so long story short, Doran Shield makes Renekton more sustainable. Renekton doesn't need damage, he needs sustain to run his opponents down because he has greater early game damage-based numbers. There you go, problem solved. Discord isn't cutting me off this time.
Cliff notes done. I expect to see, that come up on the final exam in a few weeks' time. As Tree now going to use that Doran Shield, put it to use, win a nice little trade. But more action happening between our junglers, as it seems like every time we cut to the river, Ibby as well as linguini are just going toe for toe, running into each other. Very even match in terms of pacing, but with linguini's earlier successes, Ibby is going to have to find a way to sort of break away from this jungle meeting chain.
Yeah, well, right now Ibby's not in too bad of a position, right? He's got a bit of a CS lead. He has a bit of a level experience advantage, I should say. And I'm curious to see where he leads that, because of course they did lose Dragon #1 as okay, Tree's feeling confident.
Yeah, might as well. I mean, that was the Gnar already used, and now no longer Mega with linguini in the area. That is a speedy bear, and it's just a couple slaps and. Oh, it looks like KingKisuto just got eaten for dinner. 4-2 lead in terms of the kill count. 3-0 linguini. And he's going to need to have a pop-off game because down here in this bot lane, CY doesn't have the kill count, but is pulling away in that CS.
Yeah, the aggressiveness that can come out of Xayah nice and early is, I think it's dividends down on the bottom side. Pair that up with the aggression of the Alistar, the ability to just go into Jinx, who can't get away once the Alistar has committed to the engage. It's a great situation for them, but the aggressiveness is also a little bit of a double-edged sword, right? Because if linguini does decide to come visit bot lane, if L on this Orianna also decides to come visit, there's not a lot of disengage opportunities, right? Especially because they're not level 6 yet, still level 5s across the bot laners.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation. Almost a little bit fortunate that the Dragon has already been taken, I suppose, for the TAS side. Toowoomba, I don't think they want to reveal their hand just yet and risk losing linguini to CY, because as soon as that happens, then you really feel like you've lost that early game advantage you've accrued for yourself. They were able to get that Infernal Drake before, so the neutral objection is there. I just love the amount of lane pressure, though, that's still being put on by the MacGregor side. It feels like whenever we look at a side lane, they're kind of being pushed up into those towers. They're creating more space for their jungle to work with, and it's absolutely needed considering how far ahead linguini happens to be.
Yeah, in terms of just sheer gold, he is sitting at a healthy 700 gold advantage, and you can see, well, he's built that up through just the pressure he's been applying through and how he's played the game. So I still want to see some more pressure continually coming from him. But the question for me then is it really worth going top lane more? I don't think so. I feel like you've given Tree all the advantages he realistically needs, as we see the two of them trading. And you can start looking for your bottom lane or even that middle lane, as we did know that the Orianna was just forced to burn their flash.
Yeah, and already you can kind of see Ibby sort of stalking the area. However, the play is going to be made down bot. Why? Because of the return play is being made up top. linguini, again, jumping on KingKisuto and going to be getting their 4th kill of the game. Down below, the counteract was kind of stopped by Geni and that use of the chompers. No real avenue of entrance for the side of MacGregor, and once again, they're forced to kind of back away.
I kind of like the aggression down bot side. Again, you saw linguini top side, so you gank bot side. However, Geni and Ludenz were just playing a bit more careful, so they don't go down there, but they're just falling further and further behind. There is a bit of a pain in the ass when it comes to 500 gold difference between our 280 carries here, which is proving to be a bit of a problem, as Tree does visit the jungle there.
Hey, well, you can't blend in when you're hiding in bushes, Tree. You need to be in the forest itself. Ibby does find him out, yet does not have enough damage for the kill, and the eye was secured. Picked up, I believe, by Linguini, who is now looking to continue to assert his pressure. May have stepped too far. Not sure if the team had his back initially. That does mean they'll have to make the embarrassing walk back out of enemy territory. No one dies, but the Eye of the Herald has been secured.
Yeah, and now I'm very interested to see, well, where do they take the Eye of the Herald? Where do they decide to drop it? Now, I personally think that you go bot lane, try and get funnel some gold into Geni, get your Jinx online, but realistically, with the way this game is being played itself out, I kind of expect it to go top lane. It is already a 1,000 gold advantage for Tree over the likes of KingKisuto. And I kind of expect them to continue to accelerate that, even if it is a bit gratuitous to boot. As teleport coming through.
Yeah, teleport coming through right on the tail end of that Alistar combo. However, with the Chompers in that lane, there's not much mobility, and that means CY has no protection. Ludenz as well as Linguini were able to jump on that back line, and it's yet another kill for this Udyr. Granted, the damage now being back thrown towards him, and with the arrival of Ibby, there is nowhere for Linguini to go except back to his base, even able to walk away as Vasol as well as Ibby look to win this 3v2. They find the kill onto Els as Geni does what they can on the back side. Eventually, they just find out they don't have that damage. Ibby still looking to pursue, goes underneath the tower, but doesn't have the damage to kill Ludenz, and all of a sudden, Ibby could be the one in trouble. Geni looking to chase this Viego down, but gets distracted by the ward, and we're not done yet. We're still sitting in the bush. That is a very low health Ludenz. Do they go for the play? The cannon minion says no, holds the line, and stops Vasol from diving in.
Yeah, a wild fight down on the bottom half of the map here, and there is still a chance that Ibby gets taken out. Jinx has enough mana for a Super Mega Death Rocket if they're feeling confident, but not really so, backing away. So a lot of that fight was just posturing around positioning. And does basically, I feel like despite the trading kills, MacGregor actually do come out on top because look, they're the ones allowed to start up the objective. They're the ones who were setting the pace. And now they get to start Dragon number 1. There is every possibility of a Linguini steal, but it shouldn't happen. They should just give this one up. Dragon's traded, and for the side of Toowoomba, this is fantastic. I talked about in the pregame this composition of Orianna, Jinx. They don't want to fight until it's 2 to 3 items, till it's, Dragon 3, 4, and 5 that they have to worry about contesting. And so far, with the way this game is going, all they need to do is buy a little bit more time, and their teamfight composition comes online.
Yeah, the waiting game is now afoot, and what would there be the reward? Well, maybe, in my eyes, the second most powerful soul in the game, the Mountain Soul, is going to be what's up for grabs. And when you are against a front-to-back team comp, keeping your own front line alive for as long as possible can be the deciding factor, and they would love to have that Mountain Soul to sort of help out that Gnar, help out that Galio. Going to be objective for MacGregor for sure, as Ludenz, could have gone in instead. The action's happening up top. We've seen this before, Midnight. KingKisuto getting dove on by Linguini. This time, however, the tower will be able to scare the Udyr back.
For now, but Tree, he does have access to Dominus. He does have access to Ignite. It isn't beyond the realm of possibility for Tree to just commit onto King. And if King doesn't have access to the Mega Gnar bar by the time the wave crashes, that's potentially a very dead Gnar. As we're seeing Geni and Ludenz not willing to give up control of the Tribush, but
yeah, they got the combo, and that's going to be enough to take Geni down. Ludenz nowhere to go with the arrival of one Vasol. The Featherstorm used to secure another pick, and this bot lane, they were a little slower to get going, but now it's sort of a reversal of fortune with the top lane plays not working out for Toowoomba, as the bot lane plays do work out for MacGregor. In the jungle, MacGregor actually looking to push some bit of advantage. It was a cheeky invade, but now Linguini has backup. It's like, he got the schoolyard bully, paid off the tree, and the ultimate's used before the fight begins. That's because Els was on the flank. Good positioning from Ibby to dodge the ball, but cannot get out of the shockwave. Tree will secure the kill as the bot tower falls.
Yeah, trading around the map once again, but this time where we had MacGregor show their strength on the bottom side of the map, right? They killed Geni, they killed Ludenz, they had massive pressure down there. That's when they need to give up. But what they tried to do was they had their cake in the bottom side, but then they tried to steal someone else's cake on the top half of the map. And unfortunately, that's not how it goes. You put a lot of resources down bottom, you didn't have the resources up top side, yet Ibby didn't seem to care, made the aggressive play on top side, was able to put pressure onto Linguini, but he overstayed his welcome, got caught out, got taken down, and it's just a little bit of greed coming out from MacGregor there. The fact that they're not willing to trade half the map for where... At some points in the game, they have, right? They traded bot side pressure for top side pressure, but here they decided to just ignore the pressure game and decide they wanted both halves of the jungle. And, well, you get punished when you try to be greedy like that.
This is such an even game, and it's really turned into the classic top side versus bot side, strong side showdown. I feel a lot of pressure now is going to be on Tree, and this is where that ignite might be a bit painful later. A teleport would be so fantastic right now because in a side lane, I don't think anyone can stop Tree at this stage, especially not KingKisuto, who is sitting at an over 1k deficit. The problem is, for the side of Toowoomba, down below, we're looking at a similar gold deficit as well between CY and Geni. And the team fight capabilities with that Featherstorm, you know, with the Xayah, is about to be shown off right now as we see a 4-man dive up top. Actually, CY is not even needed. The kill has already been secured. MacGregor being that proactive team, flipping the map before Toowoomba was ready.
Yeah, a little bit rough there. I feel like Tree just didn't respect the fact that there were so many members of MacGregor on the top half of the map. Instead, they Tree commits to trying to trade against King and gets punished for it justly. Now, here's where that top half bottom side trading kind of needs to shift, because obviously your Jinx is your late game powerhouse. Tree on this Renekton is merely a meat shield to buy her time in the mid to late game, unless CY is horribly out of position here. So now you need to start fiddling more gold onto the Jinx, because the Jinx at that 1,500 gold deficit, if you get to the next couple team fights and Jinx hasn't got her 2 to 3 items, I just don't see how you're meant to win it on the back of a Renekton who will be falling off, and an Orianna who will not have a lot of inherent damage. She'll have a Liandry's and a Seraph's. That's not good enough for a team fight.
Oh, I do feel, though, Toowoomba may have gone away a little bit. They should be looking to recall right now. This is not a fight they can actually afford to take because Geni hasn't had a chance to reset. This Jinx did get past that 7,100 sort of gold AD carry power spike moment at the same recall that CY did, had they recalled at the same time. But deciding to stay and opt for, I suppose, the positional advantage is going to put them at a significant damage disadvantage. And if MacGregor is fast enough, they might be able to stop this dragon. However, they got to charge into that pit, and here they come. The dragon secured, but look at the cost. CY on that back line is running rampant right now. The heroic entrance doesn't catch anyone, but the cutoff does catch themselves a Tree, which does get knocked down. Oh, they had their chance, Ewan, and they absolutely took it. MacGregor comes up big.
Yeah, you talked about earlier the fact that MacGregor gave up position for item advantage, and they might be able to pick up else as well, because this Orianna is not making it out alive. A fantastic move here, and Toowoomba, they got caught sleeping. I don't think they were expecting MacGregor after the recall to come in and contest the objective, but they did. They came back down there. They were able to at least secure themselves the objective, but losing the fight is a massive problem now, because that continues momentum.
Exactly. I mean, their main damage dealer, Geni, in that fight was sitting on 1,600 standing gold. Like, those are the things you need to avoid. And there was time to recall. There was time to reset. But instead, Toowoomba opted to go, we want the positions for the dragon fight. We don't want to fight into our opponents because we think we have the tools to zone them in that choke point with the Orianna Shockwave. Unfortunately, because their opponents did have that time to buy, they were more than prepared for it. And the Shockwave didn't catch CY, that major damage dealer. And you saw absolutely shredded them up. So too did Vasol, by the way. I don't want to discredit this. Galio was massive in that fight in terms of the positioning and the damage to boot. It was just a really clean team fight for MacGregor. It was one that they were prepared for, and I feel like this could be the catalyst that really starts to put them ahead in the game.
Yeah, well, it has built them a bit of a gold lead. About 3,000 gold now globally is in their favor, and it's a bit weird to see a team that has a 3,000 gold advantage be 3 turrets up. Typically, you would expect, you know, more kills or less turrets to only be a 3,000 gold difference, but then you got to remember that King has basically been fighting a 1v2 lane. Galio is ahead of their opponents, and this is kind of what amazes me. Vasol is 1,000 goals ahead of his laning opponent. Like, that shouldn't be allowed to happen, as Ibby is feeling confident.
Yeah, Ibby's feeling very confident because he have the backup of KingKisuto and a teleport, but You have to remember, this is still a 5-kill. Udyr is absolutely able to delete Ibby. The teleport coming through, though. We're still going to fight. That is 5 members strong from Toowoomba, and this is their best chance to win a fight because the Lemmings are just sort of walking in. KingKisuto is dragged out of the fight, but down below, that is where CY is lurking, and has already found Ilse, gets the kill before the shockwave goes off, and the heroic entrance hits 3. CY just sitting safe behind this Galio, but eventually linguini finds an avenue back in, only to get hit by the Feather Storm. It gets a double kill, and you know it's going to be a triple, a massive fight for CY right there, and the entire side of MacGregor that's not quite done. Eben looking to chase down trèe, who does get one on the tail end before Vasol cleans up. I think they'll still take it. It's a 4 for 2, and more examples of MacGregor exerting its dominance.
But what a scrappy fight that was. Toowoomba looking for that re-engaging after Ibby was feeling confident. Ibby obviously doesn't make it because King isn't really in the position to back up his jungler here. As you see an aggressive Baron call coming through here that should go through without too many problems. But one of the biggest problems in that fight for the side of Toowoomba was Geni. Geni actually wasn't involved in the fight because they tried to enter through lane, they got zoned out by CY and Eben, and then when CY rotated up to join the fight, Eben stayed below. I'm pretty sure Eben pretty much dived the tier 2 turret, keeping Geni back, and Geni, for all the strength that a Kraken Slayer Jinx can bring to the table, wasn't allowed to play in the fight. And that's why I think they were the only person to not die in the team fight, because they weren't involved.
No, it was a front-to-back team fight for a Toowoomba, where the front line was, over the hill a couple miles away, and that's all right, Jinx. You can turn your little rocket launcher into an artillery cannon. I'm sure that's allowed. You're playing Kog'Maw. They're related, I'm sure. Yeah. Just unfortunately, Geni was kept too far away from that play when initially it looked like it was going to go in Toowoomba's favor. They were the first team to get all 5 members there. They were positioned correctly to start things off, but the disruption and the sheer threat of Eben, CY, and Vasol was just enough for, unfortunately, this front-to-back team comp to absolutely panic. And the end results, well, it's this, as we see at the moment. It looks as if Toowoomba, they're starting to group up in the jungle. They might be able to make a play up above. Eben could be getting jumped upon. linguini leading that charge. The backup is there from Ludenz. Eben is caught out. The Feather Storm, though, look to be disrupted. However, the Shockwave hits 3, and there's not much MacGregor can do here unless Else and CY do find themselves out of position. Else does go down. linguini as well, and the hunt is on. Ludenz will be caught. A slam from Vasol makes the kill. trèe stops his escape as CY doesn't really want to re-engage, trying to keep that distance away from trèe as Vasol forced to tank. It's a flash play, though, and a heroic entrance does not make the save. The shield was not enough. 2 more kills go back in favor of Toowoomba.
So this is a really scrappy fight where MacGregor didn't even commit to the fight once their members got caught out, as we're seeing once again Ibby getting caught out, forced to run for it. I mean, he's not making it out here alive. Jumps. Ooh! Super Mega Death Rocket is not available. He actually makes that in one piece.
Yeah,
nice.
Ibby. A little bit of fancy footwork right there. I love recalling in your enemy jungle with protection in front of you as you do it. Yeah, they get away with that. It's not clean from MacGregor, though. That was a Baron fight that didn't really go 100% in their favor. There are still signs of life from this Toowoomba side. They just have to find more clean team fights just like that.
Yeah, Toowoomba looked for the fight. They managed to start it off by catching multiple members in the middle lane. It took them a while, just because of their lack of itemization, to actually burn through the tankier members. And while all that happened, MacGregor had to make a call. Either commit to the fight that Toowoomba has started, or take the dragon. Obviously, the call they did end up going for was secure dragon number 2. I'm not so sure that is the right decision, honestly. It's not like it's the soul dragon that's going to be with you the rest of the game. It's dragon number 2 for your team. So it's very easily replaceable, but that's the decision they ended up making. They lose 3 members on the back of it, but they still have a gold advantage and a turret advantage to boot. So whether it was worthwhile or not, I'm not so certain on that one. But they made the best out of a bad situation for them.
Yeah, it was a very strong turn around, and it gives this Toowoomba side perhaps a little bit of hope that they need. Game can still be held on a knife's edge. When you're against a front-to-back team composition, you do need to make sure you find your avenues and execute them on correctly. You can't afford to get caught out. The damage from Geni is definitely going to be enough. The rapid-fire cannon has been finished. And the Jinx is now a legitimate threat. I worry a little bit that maybe that, window that MacGregor was able to create for themselves might be down One thing, though, that is keeping it open, I think, is the individual skill. CY's positioning has been near immaculate in a lot of these fights, and even if they might have missed their peak opportunity to really put this game away, it's still going to be a challenge for Toowoomba, I feel like, to lock them down. These team fights are going to be very fast, very furious, and we're going to have to keep our eyes so closely clued in on both Geni as well as CY, as they're going to determine essentially who wins this game.
Yeah. But remember what you talked about, that the fact that Toowoomba played a top side strong advantage. Well, again, 1,500 gold in the favor of Tree, but also over 1,500, so about 1,500 gold give take in advantage to CY over Geni once again. And looked at in the itemization, that is a whole item in the favor that CY has that Geni just straight up doesn't. And in this case, it's the Infinity Edge difference between the two of them, and that is massive. That cannot be understated how important that difference is between them, as we might see the setup for a fight. Now again, if it's a team fight, remember, Toowoomba have an advantage.
Ludenz is deep. Ludenz is very deep. Ludenz is a little too deep and is already gone from the play. Heroic Entrance is only going to knock up 2, but that's the peel that CY needed to turn it back around on Tree. As into the front line, that is a very angry Ibby just running rampant. Now the hunt is on, and Geni's not going to be able to escape. The Jinx falls, but the Xayah does not. A triple kill for Ibby, who now is actually going to use Jinx to get a couple cheeky autos in. 5 members strong. It wasn't the ace, as linguini did survive, but with those death timers as high as they are, it's an inhibitor gone at minimum.
Remember, the advantage of a team fight composition is when you have battle lines. It's when you're able to keep your carries safe. They're not able to do that for Toowoomba, and Toowoomba might actually lose this game.
Yeah, this is a very dangerous push right now. Death timer's a little bit too long. However, that health bar is low on Ibby. It doesn't matter because Ludenz and linguini just cannot do anything. In goes KingKisuto. He really wants that Rakan gone. The ball comes out, but the tower falls. Nexus will be next. No one there to stop the damage. It's going to be game, and MacGregor are the last undefeated team within the state of Queensland. They get a couple kills at the end to boot. A nice little double for Vasol to sort of wrap this one off. Result still stays the same. GG's, MacGregor. You are the king of the mountain.
Yeah, MacGregor with an aggressive composition. And I really loved this game in general. The way that both these teams played around pressure. linguini makes a play on one side of the map, while Ibby makes a play on the other side of the map. You see the jungler on top half, you play around bot half. And the way that MacGregor were able to recover. Because remember, it wasn't MacGregor that set the top half, bot half tempo pace. It was Toowoomba that focused the top half of the map, and linguini early gank, ignite on the Renekton. They dedicated so many resources into getting Tree snowballing, and it just didn't work. There was like, Tree was strong, but he wasn't able to carry the game single-handedly. The Renekton just couldn't get the snowball going, and suddenly you hit mid-game, you realize, crap, our carry, who needs to be ahead of their opponent, just isn't. Geni is about 1,500 gold behind. Orianna is about 1,000 gold behind their matchups. And you get to the team fights, you haven't got proper battle lines because you're getting just swarmed over. Your carries just don't have the damage to actually kill their enemies. It's so hard to stop a team when they're on the snowball, when you just don't have the damage to deal with them.
And I think when we try and actually look why Tree didn't have that impact we were looking for, I'm going to go so far back and say it was a positioning issue in terms of macro gameplay. How often did we see Tree in the side lanes with that lead? The answer was, well, not that much. Spent more time actually in the jungle. And for someone who was leading his team in like sort of CS at one stage, actually had less than linguini and less than, you know, the mid laner and the bot laner as well. They didn't play to the team composition strength in terms of establishing those side lanes with Tree. When you have that level of advantage, you actually don't want to look for those fights, despite, you know, thinking you might have a proper front to back. You can still do it in a 4v4 with Tree dragging pressure elsewhere to other places. It was those sort of macro mistakes that I think wound up costing them, because a Renekton is not as strong in a 5-on-5 as he is in a 1v1 or a 2v2 in a side lane where he's allowed to thrive. And we keep going back to the choice of Ignite over Teleport. Yes, the Ignite did provide some of that early kill pressure. It was a great level 1 game plan that they rid up and to get them that early lead. However, you saw the effects later in the game. They weren't able to sort of throw Tree elsewhere on the map and allow him to create those side lane pressures, then teleport in for a flank. He always had to stick around the team just because of how aggressive MacGregor started to play. And the end result is a team that didn't really get to do what they wanted.
Yeah, if I feel like Toowoomba, their plan, if their Toowoomba's plan was changed, right? If Toowoomba's plan revolved around focusing on the bottom side of the map with that Udyr, I think this game could have been just a completely different beast because the Ignite on Renekton, as we said before, just I'm not a fan of Ignite on top laners. I feel like the utility that the teleport provides is just second to none, especially in a world where your macro understanding and macro execution is so critical to your success in a competitive setting. So, maybe focus a bit around bot side, especially because when you've got a Jinx, you got to give Jinx time to flourish.
Yeah.
You got to give her items to flourish. She's arguably, in my opinion, the best late game hyper carry, full stop, especially right now. Give her the time she needs to get those 3 items and just tear your opponents apart. But she wasn't given the time of day. CY played it really well on the Xayah, nice and aggressive, kept the Jinx down, didn't let the snowball happen. And we see the snowball from there as MacGregor, as we said, the last undefeated team in the league.
Yeah, it is a title well deserved, and it's kind of crazy to think that it came from a couple key macro mistake decisions out of the side Toowoomba, not getting tree established in a side lane. And I'm just going to quickly mention it one last time, that fight around the dragon where they opted for positioning as opposed to itemization got rolled. That turned into the beginning of the end. Wish we could go into a little bit more details, but unfortunately, we do have to wrap it up. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in, and I do hope to see you guys here again next week. No longer on that old channel, now, of course, here at Meta HSE2. This is the new home of the Queensland High School League. It's going to be a fun final 3 weeks of regular season before we get set for our playoffs. So do please drop that follow. Do please tune in next week. It's going to be a blast. On behalf of myself as well as Midnight, thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.